Hey guys, so today I want to talk about what determines your cost per lead, right? If you're doing Facebook advertising, if you're doing Google, what are the factors that are going to determine your cost per lead? This is a question I get asked all the time when I talk to people about this. They want to know, okay, how many leads does it take to get a deal? How many leads does it take to get a contract? How many leads am I going to get in 1 month of advertising? What's my average cost per lead going to be? What's the quality? Like, there's just so many different questions that I get about cost per lead, and there's a lot of factors that can really change what your cost per lead is going to be. And so I want to go over that in today's video here, and I'm just going to go through this pretty casual here and just kind of list them. Okay, so there's basically the way that it works is there's a spectrum of different factors. Or I should say there's a variety of different factors, and each of those factors, it's going to be a spectrum. It's kind of like having a panel of dials, right? And on the left-hand side, it might be the low side, and then you have the right-hand side is high, right? Low to high, and it's like you have a bunch of dials, and you can kind of slide them from left to right. And a combination of adjusting all these dials is going to make your cost per lead more expensive or cheaper. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bullet point what all of these dials are. Okay, so first of all, you have to think, your market that you're targeting. Okay, so that's the number one thing is competitiveness I can spell right here, competitiveness of your market. Okay, so obviously the more competitive your market is, right? You slide that dial to the right. The more the competitive your market is, the higher the cost per lead is likely going to be. If you're running your ads and you're only targeting way out in the countryside or places where there's not a lot going on, maybe there's not that many buyers, right? Cost per lead would probably be lower because there's probably going to be more opportunities and less competition for people marketing to those leads. Okay, so where you actually market is going to affect your cost per lead, right? If you're only targeting really competitive major metropolitan areas and that's it, on average your cost per lead is probably going to be a little bit higher than if you're just doing way out in the middle of nowhere where there's no competition. So that's kind of the one major thing that'll affect your cost per lead. Another thing, okay, so the platform you're using, platform you advertise on. Okay, so this is like Facebook might be on the left hand side, right? Google is more towards the right hand side, and I guess you could say SEO as well, right? So Facebook, we'll say Google PPC /SEO. And I've gone over this in other videos, but the main reason for this is just because you have to think of the difference between the two. Okay, so one is a search engine on the right hand side, right? You move the dial that way. The other is a social media platform. You can have leads of all types of motivations and intention, right? Some are going to be more cold, some are going to be warm, some are going to be very hot leads, some are going to be very motivated, some are just going to be somewhat motivated. There's a spectrum. When someone is searching on Google or any search engine looking for help, they tend to be higher intent, right? So therefore, advertisers and wholesalers and investors know this, so they're going to bid higher on the keywords that those people are searching with. Okay, so those leads are probably, right, they're going to be looking for multiple offers. They're going to want to take action quicker. They tend to be a little bit more highly motivated. And this is just on average in general, okay, which is why Google PPC leads tend to cost more, especially in competitive areas, right? And SEO is kind of the same lead, except, right, SEO arguably is it's a long-term process to get your organic ranking to the top of Google. So when we're just looking at cost per lead, right, you just imagine PPC. Those leads on average are going to be higher intent and cost more. Facebook is a social media platform. You're going to have a much wider spectrum of people on that platform, right? So when you're advertising on Facebook, the goal is to qualify properly and build the right audiences to show your ads to the right people. But it's going to be more of a spectrum. Cost per lead generally is going to be less than Google, right? But those leads maybe require a bit more longer term follow-up, okay? And there's going to be a wider spectrum of motivation on Facebook. Now, that's another dial, okay? So what platform you're using. Another one is how much you are qualifying the leads. Okay, I've gone over this in I think my last video. I went over this a lot, but how much you qualify the leads. Okay, so for example, I talk to a lot of people and they say like, Derek, I've done Facebook advertising in the past we got really low cost per lead. We were getting tons of leads, but they were just absolutely garbage. They were a bunch of buyers and renters and people that were confused and bad numbers and all this stuff. And, you know, we got tons and tons of leads, right? Really low cost, but nothing came of it. Okay, that's because you didn't qualify those leads at all. Like that is like turning that dial all the way to the left, right? All the way down. We're not going to qualify at all. We're just going to let anyone and everyone through our funnel, and anyone can become a quote-unquote lead. Okay, well, yeah, you could get 1 million of those, but they're not going to be worth anything because you haven't put them through any kind of process. There was no friction to them actually submitting your form, right? They just saw an image that they liked. Maybe it was a distressed house. They clicked the Facebook image and submit their information. Oh, what's this? Oh, I don't know, right? There's nothing stopping them from doing that. That's how you have to qualify. Okay, so at the far left end of the spectrum, right, when you're not qualifying at all, you can get low cost per lead. Okay, and usually you're going to do that, which is lead forms on Facebook, right? So let's say lead forms on Facebook with no qualifying, with no questions. Okay, no qualifying questions. Whereas on the other end of the spectrum, let's say that you start adding some questions to your lead form. You start asking people actual questions that you would ask a seller, right, to make sure sellers are clicking through. Okay, that's going to qualify a little more. Okay, let's say that you ask 5 questions instead of 2. That's going to take a little more work. That's more friction. You're going to qualify even more. That's going to raise your cost per lead. Okay, let's say that instead of using a lead form, you send them off the Facebook platform to a landing page. Or maybe you're running Google PPC and they're going to a landing page. Okay, so now that's a little more friction, right? So now you're qualifying even more. Let's say you ask some questions on your landing page. Okay, well, now let's say that you have a huge long form that the lead has to fill out, right? We don't do this because it tends to overqualify, but let's say that you have like a really long form on the first page of your landing page with like 70 different questions. No one's going to take the time to fill that out. But if someone is extremely motivated and really likes and trusts you and wants to work with you, then sure, maybe you'll get a couple leads that'll fill that out, and they're going to be extremely motivated, highly qualified leads because they took the time. Now, we don't want to go to that end of the extreme, really, right? But we want to find a happy medium balance in the middle. Okay, I always tell people that my goal is to qualify as much as possible without increasing the cost per lead to the point at which the campaign is no longer consistent. And I'm gonna make that point again at the end of this presentation because that's really the main point here. But at the other end would be, let's say, landing page with lots of questions. Okay. So that's like another dial, right? Turning this dial up and down. Okay, so we've gone over competitiveness of the market, what platform you're actually advertising on, how much you're qualifying those leads. Okay, another factor could be how much you're spending. Now, this is less of an issue, but the only thing to keep in mind here is when you have a very low budget, okay, it takes longer to optimize. Okay, so low budget, and this is just in general, right? This isn't always the case. Sometimes it doesn't matter at all, actually, but it's just something to keep in mind, right? It's just it does affect things sometimes. So if you have a lower budget, then you're going to be spending less, right? So you're going to have less leads coming in as often, right? So it's just going to take longer to optimize. So low budget equals longer to optimize. And what I mean by optimize is doing the testing, right, to figure out what is actually working well and what's not. So if you have too low of a budget, like if you're spending $500 a month on Facebook ads, or right, $1,000 a month on PPC, very, very low budgets, it's going to take a while to figure out what's working and what's not, and that will affect your cost per lead, right? So low budget, longer to optimize. The other end of that obviously is higher budget, which equals quicker to optimize. Okay. All right. So the next thing to go over is how wide is your targeting. Now, this is related to the competitiveness of your market, but if you are only let's say that you're only kind of narrowed down to just like a single couple zip codes or a single county, something like that, versus doing the entire nationwide, that will significantly affect your cost per lead. Now, it's kind of counterintuitive because a lot of people actually think like, okay, well, you're just going to start in our local area, we're just going to advertise to a couple zip codes or just a couple counties, and then we'll start expanding out from there. And they think that that's actually going to be a better way to go. It's actually the reverse. Now, it depends on, how comfortable you are with doing either virtual wholesaling or working in multiple markets, right? Like, what does your disposition network look like? Do you have, can you dispo properties nationwide, right? That's something to consider. But it's a little bit counterintuitive. So the wider that you go, generally that reduces your cost per lead. So, let me just say local versus national targeting. Okay, so basically the idea is that if you are targeting, very local targeting or very small targeting, that's going to be the left, one end of the dial, one end of the spectrum. And the reason that it increases your cost per lead is just because generally when you go so narrow, there are less opportunities coming through the pipeline. And when there's less leads coming through the pipeline, right, you're going to be spending a little bit longer in between getting each of those leads. The other thing is that, again, this relates to, the time to optimize, right? If you're getting less lead flow because your market, you're only selective, like a very small area, that could take longer to optimize as well because you're getting less data in to actually do the optimizations, to actually figure out what's working best and not. So when you go wider, right, now you've opened up to a whole bunch of different opportunities, right? Whether it's search volume off of Google, right? You're getting more inbound search volume, or on Facebook, where you just have a much bigger audience to work with, and the algorithm on Facebook can look at that wide audience of people and actually pick out the lowest hanging fruit, the people it thinks it's going to be most likely to click on your ad. And so you'll start to get more leads coming in actually quicker, which then it's kind of like a feedback loop, right? So basically, especially with Facebook. So with Facebook, if you're targeting nationwide, there's tons of opportunities. Facebook can start picking them out, right? It's like, oh, this is probably a good person to show the ads to, and this person. And so then you start getting leads coming in. And then Facebook knows even better. It's like, okay, these are the people becoming leads. This is what we're going for. Now I know exactly who to show the ad to next and next and next. And it's kind of this recurring, this feedback loop, and it actually helps bring your cost per lead down, sometimes very significantly. So, very local, small campaign, or targeting, I should say, versus a very wide, maybe national, right, or multi-state campaign. Okay. The other obvious, let me fix my spelling here. The other thing to consider, now this is kind of the obvious one, is effectiveness of your ad copy and creative. Okay, so what this means is if your ads are good or not, basically. I mean, it's basically comes down to that. It's as simple as that. So if you are running ads that are not written well, if you're showing images that just don't resonate with your target audience, or maybe your images are too bland or too dark, or they don't stand out at all, right? Maybe the video that you created, the audio is really bad and nobody can hear what you're saying, or maybe there's so many different factors, right, that can affect what someone clicks on, right? What we're trying to do when you're marketing on Facebook, maybe this is less true of Google, but especially with Facebook, is because Facebook is what's called disruption marketing. Again, you're dealing with a social media platform. We are trying to put ads out there to get someone's attention, right? To disrupt whatever they're doing. What are they doing? They're on their phone, scrolling down their phone. Okay, so we have to use images, headlines, creatives, ad copy, things like that act as scroll stoppers, that literally stop someone from scrolling. So it's like if you've ever been on your phone and you're swiping through your phone and then you see something that catches your eye and you're like, oh wait, what was that? That's what we're trying to do with these ads. Okay, so with Google, the concept's a little different. Okay. With Google, we're not really trying to use the scroll stopper because people aren't scrolling, they're searching. So what we want to do with Google is make sure that our ads relate directly to what they're searching for. because it's kind of like if you're searching on Google for bananas and then you start seeing links that that are related to apples, right? It's like, well, this isn't what I searched for, and you're not going to click on it. But if you search in, something about bananas, and then the first headline there has, this is all about bananas and XYZ, okay, you're going to be much more likely to click on it because it's relating directly to what you search for. So in Google, it's really about streamlining, making sure that it's very specific to what they're searching, because then it's much more likely that they're going to click. So again, that's effectiveness of your ad copy, effectiveness of your campaign. How likely it is that are people to click on it. And once they do, are you speaking to their pain points? Are you speaking to, the situation that they may be in? Like, are you presenting a good offer? Okay, so these are other things that I'm going to list here, but effectiveness of your copy and creative, right? So for example, on Facebook, you'd want a good scroll stopper, and Google, you'd want very streamlined ads. And then, like I just said, the offer and speaking to their pain points. So if your offer on your ads, right, if you just say, hey, we're investors, we're looking to buy houses, and that's it, okay, you might get some people interested in that. But if you say, hey, we're investors in this area looking to purchase this type of, property, and we're willing to pay more than the usual investor would. And if you're in any of these situations, X, Y, Z, right, A, B, C, like listing a bunch of different situations that could be. If you're relocating, if you're going through divorce, if you're in foreclosure, if you are, dealing with an inherited property, if you have a vacant home that's been sitting forever, like if you're in there's so many different things you could list there, right? Here's what we can do. We can do this for you. Can we do that for you? You don't have to deal with agents. There's no repairs. There's none of this. There's none of that, right? No closing costs. Like if you list everything and you're speaking directly to them, and then you say, okay, and here's our offers. We're going to get you a cash offer in less than 24 hours, and there's no obligation, and just have a chat with the phone on us, or just have a chat on the phone with us, right? That is going to be much more effective than listing no pain points, just saying, hey, we buy houses. Right. So that's the other thing, is the offer. Now, I've gone through quite a bit here. I don't want to go through this too much more. I think that this covers quite a bit. So again, you have to look at each of these points, and you have to consider, okay, like how far have you turned the dial up on certain ones, and how far to the left have you turned that dial down, right? So maybe you have a very, like for example, on the extreme end, on the extreme end, maybe you have a very, very competitive market. You're only marketing on Google pay-per-click, which tends to be more expensive. You're trying to qualify the leads a lot. So maybe you have a landing page that asks them a lot of questions. And you have a kind of a budget on the lower end, so you're not spending enough. And you're doing it really local, so you're only targeting maybe a couple zip codes. And you haven't really streamlined your ads, so your ads aren't that effective. And then your offer, like you're not really communicating to them what it is that you offer. You're probably not going to get very many leads. So like you gotta think about that, right? And then on the other hand, okay, what would be the ways to get tons and tons of leads? Okay, so you market only in markets that are not competitive, where people are not really wanting leads, right? So there's no competition there. Maybe you're doing it on Facebook. You're not qualifying the leads at all. You're just letting anyone and everyone come through your funnel. And then you're spending, this one, again, let's say that you're, this wouldn't really matter, but you could be spending, maybe that you're not spending that much. Okay. And then you're going, well, actually, let's say that you're spending a lot. Let's just say you have a high budget. Okay. Let's say that you have a really high budget. Okay. And then you're going nationwide. So you're targeting the entire US. Okay, and then let's say that your ad copy is really, really effective, right? It's getting lots and lots of clicks, getting lots of attention, and you're also speaking to people's pain points, right? So you could see like that would basically be getting you a lot of leads, but they wouldn't be that qualified. Does that make sense? So on the one hand, you could be trying to qualify to like a very high degree and not spending enough, and on the other, and using like a very competitive platform in very competitive areas. On the other hand, you could be going really wide, targeting, only places that are not competitive, not qualifying at all, spending lots of money, have a very effective ads, so getting lots of clicks, but all the leads are basically not qualified. Like they're not the type of leads you want. Okay, so you could see like it's kind of a spectrum, right? And my goal, and this is the last part I want to make here. I hope this has all made sense so far. This is turning into quite a long video, so I'm going to wrap it up here. The last point I want to make is basically that our goal working with our clients, okay, is we want. So here's the goal. Our goal is to increase the quality of the leads, okay, as much as possible for the areas you want to target without increasing the cost per lead, okay, to the point where lead flow is no longer consistent. This is, and if I can, I'm having trouble spelling today. Thank you. Okay, still can't spell. Consistent. There we go. Okay. This is the main point. So again, I'll repeat this. The goal is to increase the quality of the leads as much as we possibly can for the areas that you want to target without increasing the cost per lead, okay, to the point where lead flow is no longer consistent. So let me make this caps 2. These are the main points, right? Quality, we want to go up. We want to stay in the areas that you want to target. And we want the cost per lead not to go so high with the quality where you're not getting in enough leads. This is the main thing. So again, to answer the question, the first question was, what determines your cost per lead? Well, it depends. It really depends. It depends on a lot of things. And I don't think that that's really the right question to ask, because at the end of the day, what matters is your ROI. And your ROI is going to depend on getting consistent lead flow with leads that you can actually work. And so, when a client looks at, their quality of lead and how many leads that they're talking to and how often, and, how many properties are getting under contract, and then, how many of those are closing, the cost per lead starts to not matter as much as long as the lead flow is consistent and they have a good return on their investment. That's the main thing that you want to think about. So I hope that this provided value to you guys. I hope that this all makes sense. This is the way that I've been doing this for a while now, advertising, and you kind of have to change your mindset about things. A lot of people are used to doing outbound, where they pay a certain price for a big list of leads, and then they cold call them, text them. Inbound is a little bit different. So let me know if you guys have any questions. Always feel free to get in contact with me. Just shoot me a message on Facebook or Instagram, or you can comment on this post. But hope that that's helpful, guys, and we'll hopefully talk soon. Thanks.